Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. So in this tutorial, you will learn Nginx right from scratch. Even if you haven't used Nginx in the past, don't worry. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a complete understanding of Nginx. There are 5 different sections in this tutorial. In the first section, you will learn about the fundamentals of Nginx. What is Nginx? How is it compared to Apache HTTPD? How to install Nginx and how to access Nginx. In the second section, you will learn how to use Nginx as a web server. So we will create a static application and we will learn how to access the application using Nginx. Then we will learn how to use Nginx as a reverse proxy. So you will learn what exactly is reverse proxy and how Nginx can be used as a reverse proxy. Then you will learn how to use Nginx as a load balancer. So we will be creating 2 Node.js applications and I will show you how to use Nginx as a load balancer where you can use round robin as a load balancing algorithm. And also I will cover few more algorithms. Finally, we will also create a self-signed certificate and we will learn how to access the applications using HTTPS, that is through Nginx. The README file covers the complete details. So if you go through the README file, you will find everything that will be covered as part of this tutorial. There is also a detailed MD file for each of the section. For example, if you look at Nginx as reverse proxy, everything that I'm going to cover as part of this section, it can be nodes, it can be commands that I'm going to execute, or it can be configuration changes that I'm going to make. Everything will be part of these MD files. So after watching the video, I highly recommend you to go through these MD files and make sure you practice things that you have learned. That way, you will never forget Nginx. This tutorial is going to be super interesting. Please make sure you watch it till the end. And after watching, make sure you try it at your end. Let's get started. So on this channel, whenever we learn something new, we always start with understanding what and why. Let's do the same thing for Nginx as well. What is Nginx and why Nginx? Nginx is initially launched as an open source high performance web server. So a web server is something that is used to serve static content. For example, HTML files. However, the usage of Nginx at this point is not limited to a web server. Nginx has a lot of advanced capabilities, because of which it is also used as a reverse proxy. It is used as a load balancer. It is also used for HTTP caching. We will learn about reverse proxy, load balancer, and web server as we proceed in the video. But for now, what is Nginx? Nginx is launched as an open source, high performance web server that is used to serve static content like your HTML files or front end. However, the capabilities of Nginx at this point is not limited to a web server. It is also used as a reverse proxy. It is used as load balancer and also for HTTP caching. Now the question is, why Nginx? Because Abhishek, there is something like Apache HTTPD. So HTTPD exists before as well. So why should someone prefer Nginx? So the answer is very simple. Of course, both Nginx and Apache HTTPD, they serve the same purpose. They can be used as web server. However, the performance of Nginx is far better when you compare it with HTTPD. Nginx comes with an event-driven architecture, whereas HTTPD comes with thread-based architecture. Because of which, when you are dealing with large number of users or when you are dealing with a lot of processes, Nginx can be much useful when compared to HTTPD. Also, the memory usage of Nginx is quite low. That's why it became very popular in the world of cloud native. So when you're dealing with your applications on cloud platforms or as containers, as Kubernetes cluster, I mean within the Kubernetes cluster, Nginx is much preferred because one, it can handle large number of users. Two, the memory footprint of Nginx is quite low when compared to HTTPD. Also, it serves the static content very, very fast. And it is very simple. As we proceed in the video, you will learn how easy it is to use Nginx. Even though if it is your first time, you will find it very simple to install and configure Nginx, not only for web server, also for reverse proxy, load balancing as well. So now let's understand how to install Nginx, right? Because if you want to use Nginx as a web server, or maybe if you want to use Nginx as a reverse proxy, first we need to know how to install and use Nginx. For that, I will launch a VM on a cloud provider. So I'll be using AWS. I will head to the instances and let me create an instance. Very simple one. You can actually use a free tier instance. Especially for this tutorial, you don't need a T2 medium or you don't need an instance that is charged by the cloud provider. So I'll just call it as Nginx. I will choose Ubuntu as the base image. I'll go with the default option, which is T2.micro. I'm perfectly fine with it. If you don't have a key pair, specify a key pair or download the key pair. In my case, I will use the Nginx key pair, which I've used in the past. And then make sure SSH port is open. So 8 GB EBS volume is fine. SSH port is open. Along with that, if you want, you can allow HTTP traffic. Or once you install Nginx, you can go back to your security group. Even at that point of time, you can allow the HTTP traffic. So for now, let me just leave this and click on the launch button. Again, you don't have to worry at any point of time if you're confused with the commands that I'm executing. If you want to copy the commands, don't worry. Right now, I'm covering the first section of the tutorial. So you can just head to 01 getting started and you will see all the commands that I'm going to execute. For example, if you are on Ubuntu, this is the command to install Nginx. On RHEL, even if you're on Windows and maybe you want to use the Docker environment, you can just go ahead with it. Let's see if the instance is launched. Okay. Looks like instance is created. Let's try to SSH to the instance. I'll take my terminal. Great. SSH hyphen I. I have my key value pair downloaded and it's in the downloads folder. Nginx Ubuntu at the rate. Yes. When you run this command, let's say you run into an issue which says permissions are too open. It's very simple. You just have to go back to your key value pair that is in the downloads directory. Maybe you switch to downloads, something like this. And within the downloads, run this command chmod 400 followed by nginx.pem, whatever is the PEM file name. Going back, so I will SSH to the instance one more time. Cool. Now, how do I install Nginx on Ubuntu? As first step, update the apt repositories, sudo apt update. This will take a couple of minutes if you're doing it for the first time, because it has to get all the packages and it has to install all the packages. Basically, update the packages, not install. Once this is done, perfect. Now sudo apt install nginx -y. The reason why I provided -y because it does not ask my approval. Once it figure out the packages that needs to be installed, it just proceeds with installing nginx. Okay. Now nginx is installed, but let's verify if nginx is started. How do you do that? Sudo systemctl status nginx. Because nginx is running as a service on this host. So I'm using systemctl to check the status of nginx. If you see active running, that means nginx is running fine. However, at this point, if I copy the instance ID and if I try to access the instance on the browser, it does not return anything. Typically, connection will be refused after some time because I haven't exposed the port on the EC2 instance. Basically, I did not allow the inbound traffic to the EC2 instance. How do I do that? I'll head to the security groups. So this is a security group, and within the security group, I just need to allow the inbound traffic. Edit inbound rules. Right now, SSH is the only thing that's open. I'll just change this to HTTP, and I will allow from anywhere on the internet. Also, I will allow HTTPS, which we are going to use in future. So I'll just say scroll down. Perfect. So HTTPS anywhere IPv4 save rules so that I can access it from my laptop. I can access it from anywhere else on the internet. Only port 80 and 443. Okay. Now you can see it is automatically refreshed and it says welcome to Nginx. But Abhishek, how I just entered the IP address of the EC2 instance. I haven't specified any port. How is Nginx accessible? By default, Nginx service runs on the port 80. So if you don't specify any port because you're using HTTP as the protocol, the default port for HTTP is port 80. But the big question is, how did Nginx serve this static content? Okay, you got the IP address from AWS. You accessed it on port 80. Because Nginx is running on port 80, request is sent to Nginx. However, you haven't created this HTML file. So from where did Nginx get this HTML file? And how did it return this output back to you? We will learn that in section 2. But for now, I hope you understood what is Nginx, how is it different from HTTPD, which is Apache, and also I hope you learned why Nginx is very popular in the world of cloud native, because Nginx is fast, Nginx memory footprint is very low, and also it can serve large number of requests. That's why in the world of containers and Kubernetes, Nginx is very, very popular. If you're using something different from Ubuntu, make sure you use the right commands and install and configure Nginx. Now let's head to section 2, that is using Nginx as web server. What is a web server? Just a quick recap. A web server is a software that serves the static files, something like your HTML or CSS for styling, JavaScript, or also images. Whatever you see here, even this thing is served by Nginx because Nginx is a web server. And this information comes from a HTML file. Now, one thing that you need to understand, whenever you install Nginx, by default, Nginx creates a default folder for you. And that folder, if we go back to the terminal, is etc. I'll just increase the font size. So cd etc nginx. Within this folder, you can find nginx configuration files. And there is one specific folder, sites available. And within this sites available, you can actually place various domains configuration file. Typically using one Nginx web server, some companies or some MNCs use a single Nginx web server to serve static content for different domains. Maybe Amazon.com, Amazon.in. In this case, if you don't have a specific domain, maybe you just want to learn things or you just have everything under a single domain, you can create a default file like this, which Nginx creates out of the box for you. I'll just open it and show you Vim default. So here you tell Nginx or you tell the Nginx web server, hey, this is the configuration that you have to look for. So whenever someone access on slash, even what we did, we accessed instance IP and port, which is typically slash or the root. Look for this particular folder where www HTML on the instance, that is on the local host. And within the local host, look for one of these files. If one of these files is available, serve the static content from the files. And fortunately, Nginx creates one of these files out of the box for you. This is just for verification. Someone who is new to Linux, instead of going to the terminal, running the ps command, netstat command, understanding if Nginx is running through systemctl, they can just head to the browser and run the instance IP. If they see this HTML page, they can confirm, okay, Nginx process is running and Nginx installation is also successful. But Abhishek, can we cross verify? Definitely. Like if you go to this folder, right? I'll just copy it, cd to this folder. Within this folder, you will find index.nginx-debian.html. In your case, this can be different if you're using a different Linux distribution. Anyways, if I open this file, index nginx-debian.html, you will find the same content. Welcome to Nginx. If you see this page, Nginx web server is successfully installed. Further configuration is required. Thank you for using Nginx. The exact same thing. I can also show you by updating something in this file. Thank you for learning Nginx from Abhishek. Okay, let me save this file here and let's refresh the page. So you can see, thank you for learning Nginx from Abhishek. So this confirms this is the default location where www.html followed by nginx dot or nginx-debian.html. And from where did Nginx learn these things? It learned from the default configuration file. etc nginx sites available. This can be an interview question as well. Abhishek, can you use Nginx to serve static content for various domains? So interviewer might ask you, like we have example.com, example.in, we have abc.in. We want to use a single Nginx web server. Answer to it is yes. What you have to tell the interviewer, within this particular folder, they need to create just like default. They need to create example.com, example.in, and in each of the thing, just like the default configuration, they have to update things. So they have to create a server block, and within the server block, they have to mention the listen port as 80. And instead of the default server, in our case, default server is localhost. If interviewer is asking you for example.com, this particular line should be updated as listen 80 to example.com. Similarly, location has to be changed as well, right? Everything should not be slash. Maybe for example.com, it has to be slash example. For ABC, it has to be slash ABC, or any domain that they want. Root also should be updated. By default right now, we were using var www.html. I have also shown you by updating this file. So if you are serving a different domain or multiple domains, all these changes have to be made. One more thing, when you create a file here, you also have to go back to sites enabled, and you have to create a symbolic link here. So default is available in sites available as well as site enabled. You can create n number of domains in site available, but only if you create a symbolic link within sites enabled. Nginx considers the configuration as ready for that particular domains. Okay, most likely, if you're working with Nginx these days, you will be dealing with a single domain. But for your knowledge, I have also explained this thing. Now going back, apart from this, what is other important configuration file that you have to consider? There is a most important file, which is nginx.conf. This is usually admin configuration file. Some people also update the server block here. They also maintain whatever we saw, like the location, root, everything in this file. However, it's not a good practice. You can keep nginx.conf for default settings, right? For all your basic settings, like where is the error.log file? Where is the access log file? Where can you find, if TCP related configuration is enabled? Or where can you find the maximum hash size related to this Nginx? All that is available in this nginx.conf file. So you can use this file for basic or default admin settings. Rest for your domain, for your web server, domain for the web server, you can use sites available and create a configuration file for your domain. Once again, if you don't have a specific domain, if you're totally fine, now just head to the sites available and create a default configuration file. Okay. Now, Abhishek, in the previous section, we used var www.html, this folder and a file from there. Instead, can I use Nginx as a web server? Of course, you are using Nginx as a web server here as well, but can I create my own static content? And instead of using this default file, can I create my own static file? And can I use Nginx as a web server to serve it? Definitely yes. So what you can do, just like the example I have provided in the GitHub, use this command, head back to the root location or home location of your Ubuntu, run this command. What is it doing? Echo hello from Nginx web server, and it is creating a different file this time, which is called index.html. Okay, the file is created within var www.html using this command. Even I can verify. Great, index.html is available. Then once you create a new file, you have to reload the configuration. To reload the configuration, you can use the systemctl command. Systemctl reload nginx. Now I'll head back to the browser, refresh it. You will see Nginx serving a different static content, right? Again, how did Nginx serve this static content? Same thing. It went to the default configuration file. It looked at configuration. It identified index.html and it served this particular content. So this is how you can use Nginx as a web server. You have the complete details in this GitHub MD file. You can also read more about the web server configuration. I have also provided like what exactly each line means here, what is listen 80, what is server name, what is root, what is index, what is location. You can also use it for a quick revision. Now what happens if I serve something, or if I use this same thing, same URL, but if I use a different path, something like ABC. So you see 404 not found. Abhishek, how did Nginx return 404 not found? This is important thing to understand. Now, some of you might have guessed it. If you go to cd, etc, Nginx, sites, available. So here, if you just cat the or sudo vim default file in the location configuration, right? I'll just scroll up. So here in the location configuration, what are you telling Nginx? Okay, look for HTML file. If the location is this, serve the HTML file. If the location is not this, instead of slash, if someone tries to access ABC or XYZ, just return 404 not found. That's why Nginx returned 404 not found. If you go back, Nginx returns hello from Nginx. So this is how Nginx web server is used. You can create any static content. You can try different HTML files, HTML5. You can go for advanced CSS. Everything works. Now let's head to section 3. A lot of people might be curious about it. How to use Nginx as a reverse proxy. We will start with understanding what exactly is reverse proxy. So till now we dealt with front end, right? Because we were learning Nginx from web server point of view. Now let's switch to backend. So what is a reverse proxy? Imagine you have written a Node.js application, right? So you have written a backend application and you want this backend application to serve something to your client. So if you just place this on an EC2 instance, and if you tell the client, hey, this is my EC2 instance IP and this is my port, just try to access the application on this particular port. There are good chances not only your client, someone else might access your application. Someone might perform rate limiting. I mean, someone might break rate limiting of your application. Someone might perform DDoS attack. That is, they can send thousands of spam requests so that your application goes down. Or someone might try for security attack on your application. Because you just shared the instance IP or you shared the domain, anybody can try it. Today you can go to amazon.com and you can try thousands of requests, right? Similarly, if you directly host your application on EC2 and if you share your instance IP and port with someone or DNS with someone, they can perform security attack on the application. They can perform DDoS attack on the application, that is spam the application, or they can perform any kind of vulnerability attacks. To avoid this, there are two ways to deal with it. One, you can handle all that in your application. So if your organization has 20 applications, in each of the application, you should be handling DDoS, you should handle rate limiting, you should handle advanced security related things, vulnerability attack related things, penetration testing attack related things, which is impossible. Maybe your development team might not even have proper skill set to it because they are experts in developing the application. They are not the security experts. So that's why people go with the second approach where they use a reverse proxy. What does reverse proxy mean? Simply, your client, instead of accessing the application, client access Nginx and Nginx forwards the request to the application. So let's say you have an EC2 instance and on this EC2 instance, you have the application running on port 3000. Instead of sharing the client, maybe if your instance IP is 8.8.8.8, just for example, followed by port 3000, instead of sharing this address or instead of sharing DNS related to it, you will front face it with Nginx, and Nginx will serve as a reverse proxy. You will share DNS or IP address of the Nginx with the client, usually DNS. So client will talk to Nginx and Nginx will talk to your application. But Abhishek, what advantage do we get here? Nginx is a sophisticated reverse proxy. So it has all the advanced capabilities like rate limiting. Best example, if someone tries to spam with thousands of requests, Nginx will tell you, or Nginx will tell the client, hey, I know that you are trying to perform denial of service attack. I will not allow you with it. I will run rate limiting and I will not take any more requests from you for next 5 minutes or wait for 10 minutes. Similarly, Nginx can also do the web application firewall for you, or it can also implement a lot of security related features for you. It can implement TLS for you or SSL for you, right? All of these advanced capabilities are inbuilt available in Nginx. So your application developers can only focus on writing the code. They don't have to focus on all these security features. So this is called as reverse proxy because your client does not directly access the application, but the request goes in reverse. Your client access Nginx and Nginx access or forwards the request to the application. It is completely opposite to the forward proxy. I'll not go into forward proxy in this video, but this is how reverse proxy works. Now, Abhishek, can we see this? Yes, we can definitely see it. I have an example as well, right? So in the reverse proxy configuration, what we will do first, we will set up an application on the same instance. You don't have to go for huge instance. You can run it on a free trial instance as well. Let's go to the home directory. First, let's install npm and node.js. So I'll use this command sudo apt update npm and node.js installation. It should not take much time because we have already updated the repositories. Once this is done, I will create a directory, and within the directory, I will create a server.js file. Right? So let's do it. We will copy this directory location. Okay, it's still running. Okay, so now mkdir and so let's open vim server.js. Within this, it's a very simple. I mean, if you have experience with Node, this is a very, very simple one. So it starts a server, just returns this message, hello from Node.js backend, and listens on the port 3000. A simple HTTP server. Okay, I'll save this file. Now, using the node command, let's start the server.js, or let's start the server. Great. Now the server is running. You might not see anything, but server is running. It is waiting for someone to send the request. If you directly access it, right now I'm not using Nginx as reverse proxy. Till this point, I'm just running the application. Now, if you try to access the application on port 3000, you can actually do it by opening 3000 in the security group, right? So I'll head to edit inbound rules, add a rule to make it simple, all traffic from anywhere IPv4. Now, if I go to this and on port 3000, what does it say? Hello from Node.js backend. But here we are directly accessing the application. Client is directly accessing the application. Let's see how to introduce a reverse proxy in this case. That is, request will be sent to Nginx, and from Nginx, request will be sent to node. We will not be accessing application on port 3000, but we will directly access the instance on Nginx port, which is 80. For that, all that we need to do is go back to the Nginx configuration, the same file, sudo vim sites available default, and here within the server configuration, we just need to introduce proxy pass and also proxy set header. So within the location, I will just add proxy pass. So what does it say? Pass the request. Proxy pass is basically a reverse proxy that tells to pass the request to localhost 3000. So when someone accesses Nginx, using this command, it will forward the request to port 3000. Everything on localhost. So I will not change the localhost configuration. Save this file. We can verify if sometimes you might make indentation issues, or while copy pasting, you might make some issues. Just run sudo nginx-t, which says, okay, your syntax is intact. Now I will reload the configuration. Sudo systemctl reload nginx. I will head back, this time not on port 3000, but I will try to access on port 80. What does it say? 502 bad gateway. Can anyone guess why did Nginx return 502 bad gateway? Let me explain. It's very simple. So what we have done here, client as a client, right? We are accessing Nginx, and Nginx is sending the request to localhost port 3000. But while starting Nginx, we stopped this development server. So client sent the request to Nginx. Nginx tried to forward request to it. It did not get the response back. So it said client, hey, this looks like a 502 bad gateway because I did not receive any response from my upstream server. How can this be fixed? Very simple. Just here run node server.js. Now your server is running. That means now something is running on localhost 3000. So if I refresh this browser, you can see hello from Node.js backend. So this is how proxy pass and also reverse proxy works with Nginx. It's very simple concept, right? If you understand the architecture diagram here, client request to reverse proxy, which is Nginx, and Nginx forwards the request to backend server, which returns the response back to Nginx. This is the entire architecture of reverse proxy. Now let's head to section 4 and try to understand how Nginx is used as a load balancer. So let's head to section 4, Nginx as load balancer. I'm sure many of you might be aware what is a load balancer, but still, no, I'll just provide you with the introduction. Load balancing is a process of distributing incoming network traffic across multiple backend servers. So typically these days, we are dealing with multiple concurrent users, unlike the good old days where there are few users on internet. These days, there are concurrent multiple users everywhere. So imagine you are building an application. Let's say this application is serving a mobile application or maybe serving a simple game. If you have a single copy of this game, or if you just hosted this game on maybe on an EC2 instance, you just created this application and you told the customer that, hey, this is my application. This is Nginx. Use Nginx as a reverse proxy and access my application. Definitely client can access. Your application is also secure because you're using Nginx as reverse proxy. But still, What if you have 25 customers? Or what if you have 50 customers? This is not rate limiting, but here you have multiple customers. All of them are genuine requests. Maybe 100 users want to play the game. If one user is spamming your application, that comes under rate limiting. But if multiple users are trying to access your application, which is a genuine case. So for this thing, you need load balancing of your application. So instead of creating one copy of your application, you should be setting up two replicas of your application. And you should use a load balancer so that for 25 customers, what load balancer does, the default load balancing, which we call as round robin. This is a very basic load balancing where what your load balancer does, okay, it will send 12 requests here and 13 requests here. So that one of your application is not bombarded with the requests. Of course, there are advanced load balancing and Nginx can deal with advanced load balancing. For example, instead of this, you can do weight-based load balancing, where you can tell the load balancer, okay, send 40% requests here and 60% requests here. Or maybe send 20% of requests to this app and 80% of requests to this app. Or you can also tell that, if request comes from a particular IP address, if it comes from a particular customer, send request to this replica. If request comes from a different customer or for rest of the other customers, send to this application so that you can have a dedicated instance for your prime customers, right? You might have seen this even with ChatGPT. If you're taking ChatGPT Pro or if you're taking ChatGPT Plus, your requests are not very interrupted. That is because they have dedicated instance for you. You can do that using IP based or customer based load balancing. We will see all of that, right? But first of all, let's start with basic load balancing with Nginx. That is round robin load balancing with Nginx. All that you have to do is go to 4, section 4, round robin, least connection, IP hash. We'll talk about all three of them. How do you do that? Same thing. Go to this file, sudo vim etc nginx sites available default. If you are using a different domain, you should change the name of the file, right? Here, in the last section, we dealt with proxy pass. Let's keep the proxy pass the same way because still you're using Nginx as a reverse proxy. You still need Nginx as a reverse proxy. On top of that, you are adding the load balancing capabilities. What you just need to do, above your server section, just add the upstream section. So it is not within the server configuration, right? Just above the server configuration. Somewhere here, upstream, what do you say? Okay, this is my instance 1, this is my instance 2. Of course, we need to run two replicas of the application. Last time we were running application on just 3000. Now we are running it on 3001 and 3002. You should also be updating proxy pass accordingly. But for now, I will just consider load balancing to not complicate things for you. I will just show you how this particular configuration load balances the request for you. Okay, now let's run two replicas of the same application. I'll create a new folder called load test. Okay, within this, I will create server1.js and server2.js. Server1.js. Here, great. Similarly, server2.js. Okay, great. And finally, let's run both of them. Previously, we just ran one application server. Now we will run both of them, server1.js and server2.js, and both of them in the background. Let's reload the Nginx configuration. Last time I told you, you should always be verifying if your Nginx syntax is right. Only then reload the Nginx configuration. Okay, now we have the Nginx configuration also reloaded. I'll head back to the browser. Let's see if the request is load balanced. Once we should get response from one, and second we should get the response from server 2. Okay, still it says 502 bad gateway. Let's see why. So if we go back to the example, did we miss anything here? Okay, 3001, 3002. Oh yeah, I just missed this simple thing in the proxy pass because I'm using two different applications. I just need to pass backend app here. My bad. Because we are using combination of reverse proxy as well as load balancing. Did I remove that configuration? Okay. Oh yeah, I think the configuration is also removed. Let me just double verify. No problem. So we will go back here, update the backend configuration one more time, upstream. Okay. And let's go here into the proxy pass. And instead of localhost 3000, my bad, this is a mistake. I should update backend app. So this backend app will tell the reverse proxy that, hey, a load balancer is in picture. So when you are forwarding the request, make sure you send one of the requests to server 1 and send the other request to server 2. Again, I'll reload the configuration. This time, I hope things will go well. Okay, response from server 1. Let's try it again. Response from server 2. So this is round robin load balancing. You can try it again. 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So this is how round robin works. In case if it is not working for you, if you always see the response from server 1, it can be because of cookies or cache. You can try an incognito window or you can try by clearing the cache. Great. Abhishek, how do we try different load balancing mechanism? Very simple. Within this configuration, I have provided round robin here. Instead, you can use the IP hash. For example, by just changing within the upstream backend configuration, in the previous one or in this file, I just provided backend app configuration. Yeah, here, upstream backend app. Just add one line here, which tells Nginx, hey, instead of round robin, instead of the default configuration, go for least connection. Right? If I update this, it will change to least connection configuration, load balancing. Or if I provide IP hash, what does IP hash do? So this will stick. This is like a sticky session where requests from a customer always go to a particular application or a particular copy of the application. Imagine you are accessing or you are running a complete session on the application. If one of your requests goes to one replica of the application and other request goes to other replica of the application, it might create some issue, especially if it's a stateful application. So that's why in case of stateful applications, usually administrators or DevOps engineers, they add IP hash within the load balancing configuration so that sticky session is maintained. Throughout your session, request is always sent to the first connection or to the replica where your first request is sent. No matter if you're running session for 30 minutes, 1 hour, if your first request is sent to 3001 port, throughout that 1 hour session, all the requests are sent to 3001 port or your server 1, application 1. So this is how Nginx is used as a load balancer. Now let's proceed to the last section and understand how to enable TLS or SSL using Nginx. I initially planned for going with Let's Encrypt. However, a lot of you might be beginners with TLS and you might not have used Let's Encrypt in the past. Also, if we go with any paid SSL providers, which introduces costing, a lot of people might hesitate. So I thought, let me stick to self-signed certificates. So what we will do, we will create a self-signed certificate, right? And we will create self-signed certificate using OpenSSL. It's just one single command. I've also provided the command. And we will attach this self-signed certificate to the Nginx configuration. And then we will see how HTTPS will come into picture. So I'll show you if still someone tries to access the application on HTTP, what happens. First, copy this command, go back to your terminal. If possible, go back to the home directory and run this OpenSSL command. What is this command doing? Basically, we are using OpenSSL. We are creating a self-signed certificate which expires in 365 days. This is the location. This is the encryption that we are using, RSA. This is the location of the private key, and this is where the self-signed certificate is stored. Country is India, in my case. State, I'll just provide any random name. City, again, anything random. Organization, I'll just provide as test. Unit name as also test. This is where you have to be little careful, where you provide common name. Even in the documentation, I have specifically mentioned it. Whenever you provide common name, use localhost. So I'll just go for localhost in this case. Email address, you can just skip it, and that's it. Now you have self-signed certificate created. Where is the self-signed certificate created? This is the location, and this is the location where the private key is stored. You can also check it. Like if you just do sudo ls, you will find it, right? This is where you have the self-signed certificate. Great. Now, how do you enable SSL to your existing application? Let's go back to the previous state of the application where you don't have load balancing, because it will just confuse things a bit. So what I'm going to do, I will use vim, my bad, vim, yeah, and I'll just remove this upstream configuration. Great. And I will head back to my location, and within the proxy pass, I'll just provide localhost 3000, right? Localhost colon 3000. Okay, this is the state where we have the application in section number 3. Again, I'll open this file, but this time I will enable SSL to it. So what I'm doing, I'll just add these 2 lines. Where did we get this location from? When we created the application, we got the location from the same point. So I'll just maybe somewhere here. Let's say listen 443 SSL. So this configuration is for listen 80, which is HTTP. Now I'm adding it for listen 443 SSL. And server name, it can be default server or it can be a local host. We will go with localhost as the server name, right? Okay, this looks like the right configuration. Listen 443 SSL, server name as localhost, and provide the SSL thing. My bad. Yeah. So no matter how many times you do these kind of things, you don't have to remember it. You just need to know uh, what things you need to add, but you don't have to remember the exact syntax, because technically no one remembers it. everyone keeps a note of it, everyone keeps a copy of it, and people just copy it, right? Or people refer to the official documentation. You don't have to remember this syntax, listen 443 SSL. That makes absolutely no sense. Okay, let's reload the configuration first of all. What I'm going to do, verify. This is important because sometimes you might mess up with the syntax. Always run nginx-t and reload the configuration. However, one thing is left to do. We have to run the application on port 3000 node server.js. I'll just run it in the background. Okay, now the application is running on port 3000. I will use https and I will run the curl command. Of course, you can use the browser as well, but for https, curl is much better. What does it say? So it says there is a certificate in picture. I will add -k and let's see if we get the response back. Perfect. It says hello from Node.js backend. This means now we have the application running on HTTPS, which is port 443 or which is with TLS. It is that simple to enable HTTPS for your application. Again, understand the significance. I have written the application. Within the application, I haven't added any changes to the TLS, right? Everything is handled by Nginx. Nginx is used as a reverse proxy, and at the reverse proxy, I have enabled TLS configuration in the Nginx. So when customers send the request to Nginx, Nginx said, hey, only send HTTPS request to me. If you are sending HTTP request, I will block the request. Of course, I haven't blocked it, but you can also do it by just running a single command. Anyways, so it told the client, send the HTTPS request for me, and I will forward HTTP request to my application. You are not allowed to do it. I can do it because you trust Nginx. You don't trust all the clients across the world. But Nginx is something your DevOps engineer maintains or your SRE engineer maintains. So by just adding configuration to the Nginx server or within the default configuration file, you have enabled TLS to your application. So this is how TLS works with Nginx. If you are interested, you can also try it with Let's Encrypt by taking a real certificate. However, for the purpose of demo, I just wanted to take a simple application, a simple self-send certificate. So that's all we have for today's video. I hope you found this Nginx tutorial useful. Make sure you go through the documentation. I have a lot of additional things in the documentation. For example, how do you block HTTP? Something that I haven't covered, but it is present in the documentation. How to redirect HTTP traffic to HTTPS. Because in this zero to hero tutorial, I cannot cover all the things. I have mentioned those in the documentation. Just spend 1 hour and quickly go through it. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section. See you all in the next one. Take care. Bye bye, everyone.